And thank you, Chris. We can also return to that discussion after we hear from Dr. Jeff Borchert from the CDC Division of Vector-Borne Diseases, Fort Collins. He's going to give us an update on the future direction for the Centers of Excellence. And then we hope to return to that very important discussion.
Yeah, well, thanks, everybody. My name is Jeff Borchert. I'm the Assistant Director for Extramural Programs here at Division of Vector-Borne Diseases. And, part of that position oversees what we call our extramural work, which is the funds that we give out to the Centers of Excellence, the funds we give out to states. And oftentimes we have special funding like hurricane or disaster funding that we're able to give out to states. That, oftentimes filters down to more of a local level. And so I wanted to say that I do appreciate this conversation, Nina and the rest and all of you talking about what it's really like kind of down at the local level. And so I did want to talk today a little bit about a few things, and I'm going to try to share my screen. So you have to let me know it's working. All right, you guys seeing that?
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to first talk about this National Public Health Framework for well, where did it go? Hold on.
You may need to go ahead and display your presentation.
I think it's coming back now. Now it's saying to restart the program. I apologize. Oh, wow. Now it totally closed out. One sec. So what I am going to talk about today is a recently released national framework. And sorry about this one. Here we go. National Framework for the Prevention and Control of Diseases in Humans. And this is something that we, there it goes, good. So this is something that my division released last month. And this was really about 2 years in the making and involved a lot of different agencies within the US government that I'll go over in a second. But really it was a cross-agency undertaking that resulted in this document. And really we wanted to answer the following problem. And really that's Americans are at an increasing risk of vector-borne diseases, and that we're truly not really adequately prepared to respond to these threats. This comes out of kind of our hot washing and after action evaluations that we did with Zika. You may remember vital signs in the MMWR that talked about vector-borne diseases and, sort of the need. And all of this was really sort of strategic to really come up with this framework. And so we set out to do this a few years back, involved a number of different agencies within the US to develop this framework. And is really to capture the vision of a nation where vector-borne diseases no longer threaten human health and well-being. And really the mission is to protect people from illness, suffering, and death due to vector-borne diseases. And the goals of this aligned with our division's strategic plan, which some of you, particularly like maybe the principal investigators on the COEs might see these as being familiar because, we did really push the COEs to have their work plans align with the goals of our strategic plan. But the majority of those goals from our strategic DVBD strategic framework really ended up in this larger national framework with the addition of number 4, which is to assess drugs and treatment strategies for vector-borne diseases. But I'll just go through these quick. So to better understand where, when, and how people are exposed to and get sick and die from vector-borne diseases, to evaluate and improve tools for guidance and diagnosis and detection, to develop and evaluate and improve tools for the prevention and control of vector-borne diseases, then the one about drugs and treatment strategies, and then to really disseminate public health and vector control products, tools, and programs to prevent these types of diseases. So I did want to say that the Western Gulf COE was one of the better COEs at being able to align their program and crosswalk their activities to our strategic framework. So more on that to come. And really, you know, the goal of this was to come up with a document that really outlined where we were at with vector-borne diseases. As many of you know, we can't go and lobby Congress for money. You know, we're not allowed to do that as an agency, but you can, and our national partners, you know, ASTO, AMCA, NACCHO, all of them can go and do that. And so, you know, we felt like it was very valuable to create a framework that would be a very concise document that would allow us to really articulate and align our messaging and our direction so that all of the partners that, you know, on the right here can become familiar with our language, can become familiar with our goals. And so that over time, it becomes a document that can be referenced by, you know, congressional staff or whatever to really push to increase the funding for vector-borne diseases. And we can't do it alone, right? I mean, we have the Centers of Excellence, which I'm going to talk about the future in a second. We have our ELC partners, all the state and some, you know, city and territorial jurisdictions. You know, we oftentimes have additional funding that we put out to other universities. We have a whole international program. And so, you know, all of it is part of this sort of working together to really accomplish these goals. And, oh, here we go. And just, you know, we did, you know, release this onto the web. You can find this. There'll be a website at the end. I'm certainly happy to share my slides if anyone is interested. But we have blasted this out, you know, through our partners and through the whole ELC listserv group that we have to really get the word out there that this is the direction that we're headed. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about where we're at now. And you know, this framework is really important to us because it's just a step to really to get additional funding. I think it was Nina or somebody had brought up, you know, the SMASH Act and then the Kay-Hagan-Tick Act. You know, this is something we've been working on very hard because it really would allow funding to continue the COEs for an additional 5 years, and then to increase the state funding and the jurisdictional funding that we put out within the ELC program. You know, if we were able to get $20 million extra a year, I mean, that more than doubles what our current funding that we put out to the states. So you may have seen this past year that this bill was authorized, and authorized is great, but it doesn't come with any appropriation of money. And so it really kind of allows us to do what we're doing anyways, but really it's a first step in an appropriation. And so what we hope and what's included in this act is not only additional funding, but it really pushes HHS and then subsequently CDC to implement and develop a national strategy for vector-borne diseases. And so framework is like part A, and then the second part is national strategy. And then if we have funding to line up with a national strategy, then we can really kind of try to push the needle on where we're at with vector-borne diseases. So we're hoping that the national strategy will be what's next. You know, currently we're in a continuing resolution. We all know it's an election year and all the sort of tension that's involved in that. You know, our continuing resolution lasts until I think it's December 11th, and we anticipate that we'll probably have a continuing resolution beyond that, you know, potentially till after the inauguration. So we really don't know where we sit on additional funding for vector-borne diseases this year. How that affects the COEs is still about a year and a half off. You know, one thing I wanted to say about the Centers of Excellence program is this has been very successful. You know, we've we started kind of out of Zika funding and had to put something together very quickly. And all 5 of the centers of excellence that we've been involved with and have done just incredible work. And it's gained actually a ton of attention within CDC and outside of CDC. And, this past year we had Vector Week in Fort Collins, and we had this kind of huge momentum going, and then COVID hit and took over everything. But, we're confident that that momentum will continue. And so we're right now beginning to draft the next Notice of Funding Award. And so we're calling that the NOFO or the COE 2.0. And we think that we'll be able to release this sometime in early 2022. So right now, we're in year 4 of a 5-year cooperative agreement for the Centers of Excellence. Next calendar year, so 2020-21, will be the 5th and final year of the current funding cycle. One thing that's come up with COVID has been, this loss of a field season, right? And in many cases, a loss of laboratory time because universities were closed, people weren't allowed on campus. And so we've had interest from many of the centers of excellence to do what's called a no-cost extension, where it just allows a longer period of performance to complete activities, but doesn't come with any additional funding. And actually, one of the centers of excellence put in an official request the week before last to do this, even though it's still over a year off, because there will be a gap between when the current funding cycle ends, which is at the end of 2020-21, and then when our anticipating funding date is, which is around June of 2022. So most people are interested in maybe a 6-month no-cost extension, and that's something I can certainly talk about with this group if that's of interest to you all. So this next time around, we're working on the draft. We're working with all our technical staff to provide input. It's going to have a very similar focus to what it had now, but we're going to really have this increased focus on applied research. Someone's comment earlier about what really works, and what kind of tools, what kind of mosquito control actually works. We are interested in really pushing the development of new technology for surveillance, for vector control, for vector-borne disease control. We do want to continue on with the communities of practice. That has been quite successful. Many, a few of the COEs didn't have these sort of widespread connections to their state and local public health staff. And really that was able to be developed, through this funding and through sort of pushing this. Texas, I think, is one that already had, a really good focus. California was really good as well, because they just have this history of really tight interaction between the university system and then the state and local partners. One thing just to note here is that it's likely going to be a competitive award again. So everyone will have an equal chance to apply, whether or not you were previous centers of excellence or you're trying to put together a new program. And that's something that we've gone back and forth with the grants people, to either do a sole source, which would just be fund the same 5 for another 5 years. But really, we're going to be pushed to do this competitively. We obviously think that if you were a COE the first time around, you're going to have, a huge advantage. But so that's just something to keep keep note of. And then lastly, we're really trying to align everything now with our national framework, and then ultimately that strategy. And so you'll begin to see this, in the language in these Notice of Funding Awards. You'll begin to see it in the language for our ELC guidance of really trying to align everything to this national framework so that we can, just streamline our messaging, streamline our direction when it comes to gaining more funding. So that's all I had. I really appreciate being a part of this talk. I wish I could have participated a lot more. Here's the website. If anyone's interested, you can sort of Google it and you'll come up with it pretty quick. But I'm happy to take any questions.
I think Dr. Pietrantonio had a question for you quickly.
Yes, thank you for the information. I am here at Texas A&M and doing toxicology of mosquitoes. And I was one of the ones inquiring to Scott about the known cost extension, simply because when we started, as you know, since our mission is training, it takes us 1 year to recruit students. So we all started kind of a year later with our training in terms of PhD students. So the non-cost extension will help us not only finish the students, the advanced students that we have, but also help us in the recruitment. Because as you know, the universities, the vector biology initiative that we got from the Texas legislature, all of a sudden, we cannot pay tuition from those funds. So we have the money, but we really don't have the money in terms of helping us recruit. So I think that will help us the continuation of our efforts, current efforts.
So, I mean, just so I understand correctly. So, I mean, having like a funding date of June, you're saying would be an improvement the next step around.
If we can extend, I have still quite a bit of money that I can, leverage with the state's money, but I cannot leverage in terms of the tuition. So yeah, it will help us if we could, whoever has some money left, if you would allow us to extend until we get, I'm very optimistic that we're the best center. So I know that we're gonna get it. And but that's why it will be horrible for us to have to stop and restart, because there is a momentum in terms of the cohorts of trainees, the momentum in terms of the reactive, the reagents, the money. You know how it is. If we all have to stop and then restart, it just delays us in our accomplishments.
Yeah, no, and we get that. And I have actually started a conversation with Caroline about this, and I'll certainly follow up with her and Scott and find out, where your entire centers of excellence is at on that. And we're happy to entertain that. Time-wise, it's still early to even request it. We were surprised to get one from another COE, and really in the end we were like, just hold on to this for another 6 months. And COVID, I think, is, there's been sort of these, guidance that's been put out by CDC and OMB, about being able to really be very liberal when it comes to extending these. And so we don't think an extension of 6 months is going to be any kind of a problem. There's a certain path to do it, and we have to know that you want to do it, and then you have to request it officially. But that'll really come down to Scott and Caroline.
Yes, no, but what I'm saying is that, as you know, recruitment is 1 year from the time of the students applying and us committing to support them. So from academics, it's a bit of a challenge. We really need to plan ahead.
Yeah, well, and it's hard to know with the competitive cycle too. There is an assumption that, most or all, or who knows, of the current COEs will, likely have a really good chance to be involved second time around. I don't know if that helps you. I mean, it's hard not to know the guarantee. And like I said, we'll release that notice of funding award, sometime in early 2022 with that idea of funding it in June. And so I don't think that helps the 1 year out. It just, it's something that we know is difficult for planning. But I'm not sure we can fix that problem entirely.
Okay. Well, we appreciate whatever you can do for us. I really enjoy your presentation. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Dr. Pietrantonio. Do we have any other questions for Dr. Borchert? Looks like we had some other comments on the no cost extension. So we will definitely circle back to that discussion. I think there's a lot to be said. So thank you again, Dr. Borchert, for being here and for presenting. I know that a lot of us were eagerly waiting that information. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks, everybody.
And with that, I know we're cutting it close. I will hand it back over to Dr. Weaver for any further questions or discussion and closing remarks?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment related to the discussion we were having a few minutes back, and that is that we are reaching out to interact with our elected officials. Last year, 4 of us were in Washington for a couple days, meeting with congressional staff from Texas. In the past, we've met locally in the Valley with Congressman Vela. We're always willing to do this. So if any of you in the public health world or academics who have opportunities would like us to do a presentation, to talk to your local or national representatives, we're always happy to do that. I think that back to the comment made by Nina that sometimes they listen to outsiders more than insiders. We're happy to come and visit and be outsiders for something like that if you think it would be helpful. We could certainly even ask Dr. Hamer and his collaborator from Colorado to talk about their survey maybe. And maybe we can put out a 1-page brief summary of that work that's a little bit easier for elected officials to digest than the full-blown scientific paper. So we can work on that. Just since we're basically out of time, I wanted to mention that we're always interested in hearing from our public health partners. If you see opportunities for anything that we can do to help make your operations run better, for you to control vectors better, for you to interact with the public more effectively. So just because the meeting is ending now doesn't mean the discussion should be ending. You're always welcome to email Carolyn or me or the folks at A&M or UTRGV with your ideas, your questions, your requests for help, and we'll do everything we can to do that. And one of the best opportunities right now that we can offer is these internship programs. So if you think that an intern next summer in particular would be helpful to your program, a bright, inquisitive, nice person, bringing new ideas, a couple of hands to work hard with alongside your staff. Talk to Caroline as soon as you have a concept of what a project might look like for an intern, and we'll work closely with you to try to make that a reality. So are there any other last comments anybody would like to make before we finish up the session?
Dr. Weaver, I would also just like to say very quickly, there was an idea brought up in the chat box about possibly having quarterly scheduled meetings or routine meetings for public health partners and researchers to come together to have similar discussions to these. Potentially hear from other presenters. It's impossible to get everyone in for the annual meeting, but there are many more people that we'd love to hear from, hear about needs, hear about how we can be more of a resource, linking up those interns, as Dr. Weaver just stated, discussions with congressmen and helping with RFPs. I think that would start some really great discussion and figure out how we can be more of a valuable resource to our public health partners and collaborate more as well. So with that, I just wanted to say I'll work on those meetings, and so look for an email from me in the near future.
And also, if any of you in the public health world are particularly interested in some of the research projects, we have quarterly meetings for the research project people to give updates on their progress. We group them into a few different themes, and we'd be more than happy to invite you to those meetings. In fact, it would be great to get your input, your perspective on whether the progress is something that you see having a long-term benefit for your programs or not. So we will expand the invitation list to those sessions, and then we'll also try to set up some sessions that are devoted more just to the discussion of the public health needs and where the center can do more to address those. So thanks for that great idea.
I would like to make one request to the people that have a lot of Aedes aegypti. Since we have now the methodology for testing these two mutations, it would be nice to have Aedes aegypti from other places of Texas in addition of Harris County. So you can contact my student Jonathan Hernandez or myself, Patricia Pietrantonio. That way we can have a bit more information about the overall status in Texas. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other comments, I guess we'll finish up and return the rest of your afternoon to everyone. Again, thanks very much to all the presenters, as well as those who attended and had comments and questions. I think we had some good discussions. I think despite the fact that we had to do this in a virtual format this year, I'm very pleased with the outcome. I think the interactions were still pretty good, and I think we have a lot of ideas to move forward with. Finally, I just want to end up by thanking the group who helped us logistically with the project, keeping everything running smoothly. I can't recall a Zoom meeting of this size ever running with so few such minor glitches. So thanks very much to the Truffle group for helping us. And especially want to thank Caroline for organizing everything, and Caroline and also Chris for serving us our MCs and discussion leaders. They did a great job, and so please join me in thanking them, and have a great afternoon and weekend, and stay safe.